Hi, my name is Tiffany Valdez, and today I'm going to be discussing my research paper, which I'm doing for one of my criminal justice classes, Organized and Consensual Crime. And my topic that I will be discussing is the U.S. war on drugs. So, according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse in 2013, about 24.6 million Americans whose ages range from 12 and older had used some sort of illicit drug in just 1 month. So when we take a step back and we see that number, out of that 24.6 million Americans, that is about 9.4% of the U.S. population who had used drugs in 1 month. So as I mentioned, this was back in 2013. We are now ending the year 2015, so what does this mean? And why should we care about this? So what exactly does this mean for the United States? It means despite our effort to somehow regulate the wars on drugs, it is still increasing. And somehow the drug facilitations that are being carried out and elaborate criminal infrastructures are still bringing various illicit drugs into the United States. And I feel that in order for us to understand where we are right now, we need to examine a little bit of the past and see how the United States reacted then, and ultimately how other organized drug organizations came into the U.S. and how evaluate what happened and see some kind of trends in history. So the first topic that I would like to discuss is the Colombian drug cartel. And I feel like this is really important to the war on drugs right now. The Medellin cartel, excuse my pronunciation, this was ran by the infamous Pablo Escobar, and he was the infamous Colombian drug lord who, according to a thesis written by and published by Jenna Boley from the University of Maine, Pablo Escobar controlled about 80% of the international cocaine trade. So now Escobar himself, as a person, he was known for many things, but one thing was his tactics. He was ruthless. He used violence and manipulation to control the drug trade. He even waged a war on his own country of Colombia, and for the longest time was unstoppable. I would also like to mention the fact that although we see Escobar as a criminal, the people of his neighborhood of Colombia saw him as a hero. And I know that sounds ironic, but some of the money that Escobar collected was used from the drugs money. He ended up giving a lot of the money back to the community, where he restored the neighborhood and built items such as parks for the neighbors, helped fix houses, and just overall for recreational purposes to make the neighborhood look nice. So I find it interesting that Colombia saw him as a Robin Hood type figure. But to the United States, he was just a criminal who is on the most wanted list. So I also find it interesting that the drug money that was boosted, the drug money used from all the cocaine boosted the economy in Colombia, which is what I said before. He used that money to help restore parks and neighborhoods. And the money as well boosted the economy here in the United States. So, as I mentioned before, the drug cartel profited from the cocaine trade, which later became a vertically integrated organization with only one other competitor, which was based out of South California. According to Robert Alapones from Tufts University in 1987, they sold over $20 billion worth of cocaine in the United States and Europe. So the Medellin cartel had members in the United States, which is what helped them to facilitate the cocaine trade in an efficient and, some may say, a successful manner. So the drugs started entering the U.S. when Colombia sent them to Cuba, the Cuban Mafia. And then the Cuban Mafia smuggled the cocaine into the United States. And they executed this through a terminology that most people know as mules. So by this, they would have the person carry the cocaine or any other the drugs through on their person, on themselves, like in their body, and in their luggage. So it wasn't until 1976 that this began to change, and versus smuggling them on their body and going through using mules, they began to get smarter. They began using private aircrafts to smuggle the drugs into the United States, and they would use the routes in which pilots normally use, so that way they found the ways to avoid customs and not be stopped. And so that's kind of what helped them to profit a lot and be able to get a lot of the drugs into the United States. So this brings me to my next point. Due to the location of Florida, which is it's located on the southeast side, and with Colombia being nearby, the region gave perfect area for Florida to be kind of a gateway cocaine center entering into the United States. So a unique factor that helped the Medallion Cartel became the untouchable and unstoppable criminal organization is the fact that they combined forces with other cartels and other drug organizations in order to eliminate competition, and that's ultimately what helped them to profit and become unstoppable. In my research, I will discuss later on in depth on my research paper of how this affected the economy in Florida. I kind of wanted to skip ahead to state kind of the fact that in order to eliminate the war on drugs in the United States, we have to be able to take down the sophisticated criminal infrastructure that we have. And in order to do that, we have to take down Pablo Escobar, or they would have to take down Pablo Escobar. So now, fast forwarding a little bit to the future, Escobar was killed in 1993. Some say that if he died in 1993, why is there still a rise in drugs in the United States? And that is a really great question. So there are multiple answers to this question. One is simply the fact that the Mexican drug cartel simply replaced the Colombian cartel. So the Mexican drug cartels have their own unique infrastructures that include biker gangs in the United States, such as the Hells Angels, that are helping to carry out the drugs and move them back and forth across the border. And with Mexico being a border city, it's kind of easier versus Colombia. So another answer has to do with the rise in technology. Now today we live in the day of age where everything is at our fingertips, and that can be kind of scary. I mean, it allows internal citizens to be able to reproduce drugs and derivatives to them, and this was technology and stuff that was not available back in the day. So it's not so much, in my opinion, that and as my research shows, that we're not being able to do anything. It's just technology is increasing. So with that being said, I believe that the DA along with the U.S. Customs is beginning to crack down harder on drug cases, and I believe it's safe to say that the war on drugs has never officially died. There has never been an official end to the war on drugs. So in order to do that, we would have to, as I said before, eliminate the structure of the organized criminal structure that is there. And in order to do that, I feel like we need to bring back some of the great programs and the DARE programs. I feel that education does serve a purpose and it does help. And as research shows, I mean, the numbers when the Reagan campaign began, the numbers of drugs being used in the U.S. was cracked down for a while. And now that's not so much a priority anymore. And I believe that by being able to do something about this and take down those organizations and crack down harder on customs and just be educated about the process and drugs and what they can do for you, I believe that that's a way to kind of help bring an end to these criminal organizations. I would like to finish my presentation with some additional questions and answers that you guys could potentially have. So my first question that I thought of is why I picked this topic. And the reason I picked this topic is we hear so much about the Colombian drug trade and the cocaine and Pablo Escobar, and I find it really interesting the fact that he was just one person and that Colombia saw him as some of the people there, half of them either feared him or half of them saw him as a Robin Hood, saw him as a hero. And to think that one person can infiltrate a whole criminal organization and be able to carry the drugs from one place to another, and that's one of our biggest problems in US today, was pretty interesting to me. My second question was, why did I find it most interesting about my topic? And I really found it interesting, the facts of how they were being able to smuggle these drugs into the US. I thought it was really interesting that they got smart. They stopped using people as mules and they began dropping loads of cocaine into the water, and by doing this they were able to avoid customs. And it's, if you think about how much of our economy was really structured off the cocaine back in the 70s and 80s, it's crazy to think that all the money from the big cities in Florida and all the fancy clubs and everything, it's all based off drug money. So the final question that I have is, what do I think should be done? And as I had stated before, I believe that in order to put an end to organized criminal systems and to put an end to the drug wars, we have to be educated about the process. I feel like a lot of people right now just think, oh, okay, drugs, it's kind of in our views, I guess, as millennials, like it's there. And I think by educating them with the great programs, the DARE programs, and showing them what drugs really are and how they really affect you, that can start by cracking down on the drugs. But I mean, it's not going to stop there. You have to put an end to, there's the biker gangs that are collaborate with them, there's the local gangs, there's also the securing the border, and I think securing the border will help to reduce this.